Interesting facts about the Indians that we do not know. In general, before the Europeans first set foot in North America, there were nearly 400 separate Indian tribes living carefree lives in vast prairies, dense forests, magnificent canyons, mountains, and abundant water sources where deer, elk, and especially the largest of them all, bison, roamed freely. Unlike the Mayans or the Incas, they did not establish highly developed states with advanced economies and cultures, but they created a unique and harmonious way of life that suited their existence. Since this is just an overview, we will only focus on certain Indian tribes that lived in the areas we visited. Besides what we have read, we also gathered insights from visiting Indian museums in New York and Washington. Two tribes that particularly stand out are the Iroquois and Delaware, as they were dominant both in terms of population and territorial control at that time. For example, the Delaware tribe was the first indigenous group the white settlers encountered. In 1682, an English representative named Penn, whose name later became associated with Pennsylvania, signed a treaty with the tribal leaders to respect each other's customs and not interfere in each other's way of life. However, over time, such agreements turned into political maneuvers and deceptive trade practices. Speaking of manipulation, the famous scholar Lewis Henry Morgan, who developed a close bond with the Iroquois, not only studied their culture, but also worked as a lawyer to legally defend their rights. He even attempted to reclaim the land of the Seneca tribe in the reservation. However, such acts of support and assistance did not gain much traction at the time. The Delaware Indians were not just hunters and fishermen, but also developed a form of pictographic writing. Through meaningful picture letters, they depicted various events, phenomena, beliefs, and traditions. These pictographs, usually carved on rot-resistant wooden planks, are among the oldest cultural artifacts of the tribe. One example is the Walamolan, a work consisting of 184 symbols that describe the creation of the world and the Great Flood. The Iroquois, who lived in what is now Ohio, New York, Ontario, Erie Lakes, and the St. Lawrence River area, practiced agriculture alongside fishing and hunting. Before the arrival of foreigners, they formed a confederation consisting of the Onondaga, Cayuga, Mohawk, Oneida, and Seneca tribes. If colonizers had not interfered, this confederation could have united most of North America's indigenous tribes. However, history took a different turn. This brings to mind the films produced by DEFA, a film studio in East Germany, which depicted the struggles of North American Indians against colonizers. Though dramatized and exaggerated, these films still reflected certain truths of that tumultuous period. The heroic characters played by Goiko Middick showed the warrior spirit of the nomadic Indians, who once followed herds of millions of bison across the vast plains. The nomadic tribes, who lived between the Mississippi River in the east and the high mountains in the west, quickly adapted to horseback riding. Some even tamed wild mustangs and fiercely resisted intruders. Explorers and researchers often compared them to the Scythians, an ancient nomadic warrior people. But how could one's heart not ache when considering that within just 50 to 60 years, these tribes lost their great leaders and warriors? The mass slaughter of 50 million bison by settlers left the Sioux, Dakota, Modoc, and Apache tribes in hunger and despair, forcing them into desolate reservations. This systematic destruction of their way of life was a familiar colonial strategy, much like what has been seen in other parts of history. The museums dedicated to Indian history do not shy away from revealing these harsh realities. One museum is housed in a magnificent building near the famous Statue of Liberty, while the other is located close to Capitol Hill in Washington. When we visited the Washington Museum on a Monday, it was busy despite being a workday. People of all backgrounds, black, white, Asian, and more, walked through the exhibits, absorbing the history. Even without a multilingual guide, those who understood the past could feel its weight. The oppression of the indigenous people and their resistance to injustice were well documented. The museum prominently displayed images of legendary Indian leaders and warriors who fought against colonization, such as Osceola, Geronimo, Pontiac, Kinpush, Winnetou, and Tecumseh. Among them, Geronimo, known in Spanish records as Geronimo, led a fierce resistance against invaders. He and his small band of Apache warriors reclaimed large portions of land in Arizona and Texas. In one battle, his 100 Apache fighters managed to defeat a 5,000-man army led by General Crook, killing nearly 1,000 enemy soldiers. This feat solidified the Apache's reputation as masterful warriors. However, even the bravest warriors could not withstand the continuous reinforcements and superior weaponry of the U.S. military. After being captured and placed in a reservation, Geronimo escaped with just 11 comrades and continued to terrorize the enemy, moving like the wind between the east and west of America. The Seminole leader Osceola is another well-known figure in American literature and history. These Indian warriors fought fiercely to protect their land and freedom, and their names and heroic deeds have not been forgotten. Over time, Indian resistance transformed into a more peaceful struggle. Leaders like Tecumseh sought to unite the tribes politically. In 1807, he convened a Congress of Eastern tribes and proposed that any land negotiations with the U.S. government should involve all tribes, not just individual ones. He envisioned a federation of North American Indians, but his death in battle while fighting alongside British forces in Canada crushed this hope. Another striking fact is that Native Americans were only granted U.S. citizenship in 1901, and even then, only 5 tribes were initially included. Their full civil rights were only restored in 1933, when Franklin D. Roosevelt was elected president. In World War II, 25,000 Native American soldiers fought alongside their fellow Americans. Among them, warriors from the Creek, Cherokee, and Pima tribes such as Ernest Childers, Jack Montgomery, and I.I. Hayes were recognized as national heroes. One of the most intriguing contributions came from the Navajo tribe, whose 3,600 warriors served as code talkers. They used their native language to transmit military messages, which were never deciphered by Japanese intelligence. The rights and living conditions of Native Americans significantly improved during the presidency of John F. Kennedy. He openly condemned past injustices and supported policies to enhance their social and cultural well-being. Today, the legacy of Native Americans is more visible than ever. Their organizations actively advocate for their rights, and some communities thrive economically and culturally. For example, the Navajo Nation, with nearly 200,000 members, is one of the largest and most educated indigenous groups. They even publish newspapers in their own language, using a Latin-based alphabet, created by American ethnographers Lafarge and Harrington. Moreover, many Native Americans have successfully integrated into the workforce. For instance, few people know that the Mohawk tribe has played a key role in constructing 120 to 130-story skyscrapers in New York City, a testament to their enduring strength and resilience.